Okay, we're going to go on and get started here. Again, I'd like to welcome you to our K-State Research and Extension Cattle Conversation series. This is actually round 2 of our cattle conversations. It started 1st of April, and we finish up next week. If you happen to miss any of our sessions, we have these posted on each of our district or county websites. So simply go to that or contact your agents and you can find those recordings that you missed as well. This is a collaboration with, as I mentioned, several other districts to make this happen. And we truly, truly appreciate all the districts and extension agents that have worked together to put this program on for you. That includes Central Kansas, Cottonwood, Midway, Post Rock, and River Valley. So let me move to the next slide here. Alrighty, so here's a picture of our team members from the districts that I mentioned. We're going to start with Justine Henderson. She is the livestock agent with the Central Kansas district, which is Ottawa and Saline counties. And we have Alicia Bohr, the ag agent from Cottonwood district, which is Barton County and Ellis County. We have Clint Laughlin, who is the livestock agent with the Midway district, which is Ellsworth and Russell counties. And we have Brett Melton, who is the livestock agent in the River Valley, which includes 4 counties, which is Cloud, Washington, Republic, and Clay. And then my name is Sandra Wick, like I mentioned. I am the Post Rock Extension District, actually crop production agent, but we've been without a livestock agent for a couple years, so I am also covering the livestock portion of this. My counties include Osborne, Smith, Jewell, Lincoln, and Mitchell counties. So we cover a pretty wide area here. Alrighty, so it's important that we keep you involved and engaged. So we want you to be able to ask questions if anything arises during the presentation that we have. So actually, all of you are probably real familiar with Zoom, since that's kind of been the way people are doing things here in the last couple of years with the pandemic. So if you're unfamiliar, though, we'll just kind of review here. There is a chat box at the bottom of your screen, so simply type in any of your questions in that. Also, if you have any technical questions, if you can't hear, if you can't see the screen, there's several agents on, and we can take care of that as well. If you can't get your chat box to work, you can simply email your questions to myself at swick@ksu.edu or any of the agents on the team. If you know any of your agents' email addresses, you're welcome to email that to Clint, Justine, or Alicia as well. Let's move it to the next slide here. Okay. We also wanted to keep you very active in the presentation, so we will be asking you poll questions. So it's very simple. So during the presentation, we will put up some poll questions for you. There's a picture there on the right on what the poll will look like. You simply click on your desired answer that will be on the screen, and then we can share that response from you guys as well. So very simple, but we wanted to keep you engaged with that as well. Okay, without any further ado, it is my honor to introduce our speaker that we have. It's very special to me because she's actually a coworker, and Jody and I probably started about the same. She started a little bit sooner than I did, but we are kind of one of the first females in the ag positions out here. So we were kind of the pioneers out here. So but Jody is a livestock agent in the Meadowlark district, and that includes 3 counties. And she works very closely with the producers in Northeast Kansas, but she is also a co-owner and co-manager of a cow-calf operation in rural Jackson County. So she kind of wears 2 hats as well. And maybe it's not Jackson County, Jody. Are you in Jackson County or maybe some other counties as well?
Yeah, I'm in Jackson County.
Okay. But she provides the K-State Research and Extension science-based and provides information from K-State to producers about raising livestock and hopefully sustaining the family farm and protecting our natural resources at the same time. So I'm going to stop sharing so she can get her slide presentation up. You all should have been emailed this morning with her handout, so you can take notes right on that handout as well. So we'll get her to share. All righty. Can everybody see the slides and everything? I guess if you can't, then you'll let us know. I think you're good to go, Jody.
Okay, Sandra, thanks for having me and the rest of the agents. Gosh, if I'm a pioneer, that makes me really, really old, I guess. But I'm here to talk about blue-green algae and what it is and how it relates to us. For about 5 years, it's really been a problem in my corner of Kansas, getting phone calls from producers that think they have it or have had sick or dead animals. And it's really kind of a concern that we've had. I took part in a study that the vet diagnostic lab did, and they had us submit water samples. And boy, that was a learning experience because some of the stock ponds had very toxic levels all summer and it never really changed. And so that's really what kind of piqued my interest. And then some close friends of ours had cattle die, and trying to come up with answers for them, it really got me interested in this topic. So what is blue-green algae? It's a group of algae that are cyanobacteria, and that is a photosynthetic bacteria. It creates its own photosynthesis. There's a lot of species of the blue-green algae that produce toxins and can be poisonous to people and animals. The toxins are in that cyanobacteria, and it holds it until it dies. As it decomposes, then it releases those toxins. And these blooms can change the color of the water. They are buoyant, so they float around, and they can go to the downwind side of the pond. It's the most unnatural looking blue-green color that you've seen. It almost appears like in the top right-hand picture that someone has spilled some paint in your pond. And these usually will have smells associated with it, which attracts dogs, to the smell. Okay, how do I advance here? Okay. So when the water temperatures increase and we get warm, sunny days with little wind, and there's been some runoff from rain, there's always an increased chance of getting blue-green algae. The causes of it are not completely understood, but we think it has to do with high phosphorus, high nitrogen, and warming of the water temperatures. Many of our larger reservoirs have it every summer, and our farm ponds are usually suspected of this when they have been when the grass around has been fertilized. But we also saw last summer a pond in the middle of the Flint Hills that was a new pond that had rangeland that was not fertilized, and it was one of the most toxic ponds that the vet lab had seen. So there's a lot of confusion with pond owners about what a blue-green algae bloom looks like. They go out to their pond and they see some of this, and I get these calls, oh, I think I have it. And a lot of this is just natural occurring in ponds. The top picture is duckweed, and this is just a little floating plant. And I noticed yesterday that this is starting to form in our ponds already. It's actually very high in protein, so if the cattle ingest this, it's a little supplement, I guess. And then you've got your normal pond scum, and then there's the filamentous algae, and there's 3 forms of that. There's a cotton mat type. There's one that looks more like a lump of horsehair, and then there's the slimy and green stuff. And that's usually what comes in if you're casting a fishing pole out and you drag it back in towards shore, you'll get some of that stringy moss algae on there. And a lot of people confuse that with blue-green algae. So what is our concerns about the cyanobacteria? It can cause reactions even if it's not toxic. And with humans, it could be a runny nose, rashes, skin irritations, and sore throats. But then as that cyanobacteria dies, it releases the toxins. And then with humans, it's severe stomach issues, vomiting, diarrhea, can cause liver damage, and you can get some numbness in your hands and feet. With pets and livestock, it's a staggering kind of weakness. They have difficulty breathing, convulsions, vomiting, and death. And it causes a sudden death if they've ingested enough of the toxic bacteria in the water. One of the KSU vets told me it's like cobra venom. There's no cure. There's no treatment. It's just a sudden death. So these are some of the warnings from KDHE last year. Milford Lake is continually in the news. One of our office professionals has a family reunion there. They rent the cabins, and they finally quit going because more than not, they were not allowed in the water because of blue-green algae. But you can see that it has crossed the state. And then if you look at national headlines, you can see that it's a worldwide issue with elephants dying and whatnot. So a toxic bloom cannot be seen. You can see blue-green algae, but you have no way of knowing if it's toxic unless you've done a laboratory test. So our KSU Vet Diagnostic Lab will do this for $22. And you can contact your extension agent or your veterinarian to get the water tested. But one of the things that you can do to determine if it is a blue-green algae bloom is to do the KDHE jar test. And it's very simple to do this. You just take a mason jar and get a water sample just below the surface of the water, and you don't shake it. You put it in your refrigerator overnight, and then you observe what happens. If the green algae sinks, then it is not blue-green algae. But if it floats to the top, then you have blue-green algae. Now, it could be just blue-green algae, or it could be toxic, and then you would want to continue with a further diagnostic test. This whole procedure can be found on KDHE's website. They also have a stick test, but this one I think seems to be a little easier for producers to do. So after we've had several deaths and all those ponds came back with all those high ranks of toxicity, then I began asking some questions of who's doing anything about this. And so we called a meeting in October of 2019. And we had all the people from KDHE, Bureau of Water, the Vet Diagnostic Lab veterinarians, our water quality specialists, Meadowlark Extension District. There was other agents involved too, but we sat down around a table and discussed what we knew about it, what we didn't know about it. We also had KU Biological Institute, and they have a really cool facility there in Lawrence. Hate to say that, but they have 100 different little ponds that they are growing blue-green algae in and trying to figure out what is causing this and you know, what we can do about it. So we sat down and discussed all the different things that literature says you can do to treat a pond. And one of the things that really shouted out to me was that throwing copper sulfate into a pond is not really a good cure. So we came up with some ideas on how we could mitigate these ponds. And so one of the things we had read was that barley straw put into a pond as it decomposes can help prevent blue-green algae blooms. And we found the barley straw at a sheep farm in Quinter, Kansas. They raise barley for a fodder system that they feed their lambs, and then they have several hoop barns, and so they put the straw up. So they were gracious enough to bring us 2 loads of barley straw for our project. So we located ponds that had previous algae blooms, and the vet lab was very good about telling us which ponds they knew had blue-green algae. So you don't just throw this in there because you can kill fish by changing the oxygen level, but the dosing rate is 7 small bales per acre of surface water. And we stake these down around the edge of the pond, keeping them about 20 feet apart and at least half submerged. One of the things that we had a good year last year, but one of the things happened was some flooding knocked some of them out. So we went and reinstalled about halfway through the season. So KDHE did the baseline water testing for us. They tested each month for a nutrient profile and then all of the different toxins that might indicate a blue-green bloom, and then a total chlorophyll and all of the algae that might be present. The COVID thing really kind of messed us up because their labs were dedicated to the COVID testing. So they outsourced this testing, and they spent a lot of money on the testing, and we still don't have all of the results back. And we had thought we were going to get it at the end of January. So it's really put us back. So the bales were installed prior to the bloom, and this is one of the KSU vet diagnostic veterinarians installing bales. And we tried to do it in early May before anything had bloomed. Like I said, this isn't a prevention, but it will kind of cut down on the algae. So this is a shot of the bales. This was at Melbourne Swim Pond. As they decompose, it releases polyphenols and other chemicals that kind of retard the blue-green algae. So the factors that can, determine whether this works is the dilution of the water, any of the algae species that are already present, and other factors like flooding, for instance. So the ponds range from a half acre to 3 acres, and the management on all these ponds differed. The ponds were used for recreation and/or livestock water. 3 sites last year had a control pond that was pretty close to compare to. And they were located in Jackson, Jefferson, Nemaha, Shawnee, and Greenwood County. We had 8 ponds in total. So this was a good complement. KDHE had also done this in some public water supplies, Shawnee County Lake and Melbourne Swim Pond. And this pond actually had blue-green algae so bad that it had killed some livestock, and they have fenced this pond off as a result. So this is just some pictures of our crew installing the bales. A really good crew to work with. So more shots of the ponds, and some of the ponds we put bales in did not get tested. We just had some demonstration ponds that we did.
Jody, do you want to put any of the polls up yet?
Oh, gosh, thanks for, yes, let's do number 1.
Okay, great.
I had it on my notes, but I forgot.
All righty, guys. There we go. So if you guys want to answer that question, over the last 5 years, do you think your ponds have changed? We'll give them about a minute here when it comes in. And you guys should be able to see it as it's coming in. Can you see it, Jody?
I don't see any results.
No, but you see
Yeah,
it
I see it.
as the votes are coming in?
No, I just see the poll question.
Okay. 5 of 9 voted. So we'll give them a couple more seconds. I think enough of them have voted. So here's the results. Share the results. Now can you see it?
Yeah, 80% of you thought that your ponds have changed. And one of the criteria, I guess, is that the water temperature is getting warmer faster. And in fact, already March of 2020, March of 2020, some animals in Miami County died of blue-green algae poisoning. So it's happening sooner and sooner. It has even been reported that blue-green algae has been seen under ice. So it may not just be a summertime problem though that we're facing. So, okay. We'll go on. These are just some of the ponds. And last year seemed to be a really good year for ponds. They were really clean and, you know, good for the ponds and good for the producers, but not good for our study. We did have a couple blooms, but we are going to repeat the project this summer. So, yeah. So what's next? At a recent harmful algae bloom conference, we heard of all the different kinds of controls, and if you look there under SSF, that's a slow sand filter that gives moderately effective control of intracellular and extracellular cyanobacteria. So this next year, we're going to start another project. We're also repeating the pond mitigation project, and we're up to 20 ponds. We're going to be testing 10 of them, and the other 10 will be control. We did receive a grant from K-Care for the slow sand filters, and I'm working with Will Boyer and Jeff Davidson, a couple retired people, Herschel George and Pat Murphy are also kind of on this crew. And we're trying to design these slow sand filters. We also applied for the KDA conservation on-farm field projects with our local soil conservation districts, but did not get funded. So slow sand filters, kind of interesting how things go on around the world, and I'm not aware. But these were developed and researched by Harvard University. And this is how they clean water in third world countries for human consumption. And the diagram on the left is pretty good, except for the inlet and outlet are confused. The water comes in on the top, goes through a thick layer of sand and gravel. It gets pumped back out, then upwards. So we're going to be doing these slow sand filters. And one of the things that I love this, Smoochdecke is a German word. It's for a dirt cover. And this is the cover that forms on the top of the sand. And this is full of amoebas, protozoas, all kinds of crustaceans and good bacteria. This is the layer that will take out all of the bad stuff from the drinking water or from the water to make it drinkable. So we're doing our slow sand filters in these food grade chemical totes with just a little bit of PVC plumbing in the bottom and using some solar pumps to pump the pond water into this, or using the outlet tubes. We're going to run the pond water through this into a stock tank and test the water to make sure we're removing any harmful algae blooms. It'll also remove nitrates and E. coli. So we think that this can be easily replicated by producers to use on their farms. So our second question, Sandra.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to get that up. So I'm going to stop sharing those results. We'll get the poll, the second one. There we go.
Okay, so in your pastures, what is your preferred source of water? Ponds, streams, springs, or stock tank?
We'll give them a few more minutes because I think only 1 of 10 of them. Oh, here more of them come in. So we'll give them a little bit more time here to see if any more things come in. Okay, I think that's about enough. Okay, show results. There you go, Jody.
Oh my, it's a split. Well, that's great. I mean, if you have a spring, that's wonderful, or a stream, that's great too. In Northeast Kansas, it seems like ponds are our preferred source. And so we have 12,400 ponds in my 3 counties. And so trying to keep that water good quality for livestock is very important. And also for humans and our pets too. So then, Sandra, I guess the third question.
Okay, let me get that. There we go.
Have you had any experience? Have you had any experience with blue-green algae blooms?
So we'll give them a couple more seconds. I don't think any more are coming in. Okay. Oh, share results. There you go.
Wonderful. I hope you never have to. I hope you never have to.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had asked the vets was, okay, if we can't really do anything to prevent this, is there something we can do to the animals? Is there a bolus we can give them, or can you like magnesium in the mineral to fight, grass tetany? Is there anything we can do to the animals? And the answer was no. So I hope we have clean ponds in the future, and we can prevent this from happening. So I'll take any questions, Sandra, if there's
Okay.
any
Okay. I think I'm going to turn over to Justine. I think she's kind of the ones kind of handling the questions today.
Yep. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat right now at this moment. Jody, you actually just answered my question right at the end there. I was curious more about the effects it has on animals, and kind of what do we do in that situation, to where if we do have an animal that's affected by blue-green algae, what do we do? But you kind of answered that.
Dr. Steve Hensley with the Vet Diagnostic Lab, one of his comments last summer was, there's very few things that will kill animals when they're out to pasture. And so blue-green algae is one of the first suspects, I guess. And, he's challenged to get the word out to all the local practitioner vets that if they find or they get called about dead animals in the pastures, to quickly, do an autopsy and get the contents of the rumen and get that checked. So, it's like everything, communication. Death by blue-green algae is not reportable. So it's just, if the Vet Diagnostic Lab has been consulted, they know of those numbers, but so it's kind of a kind of a hidden problem, I guess you would say. But if you know you have it in your pond, it's really worrisome for the producer because, you know, you have this wonderful pond out there that you would like to water out of, and then the water is not good. So do they haul water? Do they fence the pond? So we're hoping these slow sand filters is something they can still use the pond, just filter out the bad stuff and still have that water there for the animals. So Will Boyer is working on some solar pumps to pump the pond water into the filters and then out into stock tanks. So we're excited about that project.
Awesome. So we have another question coming into the chat, actually a couple. In the research project, is there any education being done with the landowners?
Well, yes and no. We've had several contacts with the landowners. One of our landowners, the pond owner that we did a project on, he had heard about barley straw helping. And so several years before, he had unrolled a large round bale of brome in his pond. And as it decomposed, he killed all of his fish. So there's definitely a dosing recommendation. And as I had a pond management meeting, someone stood up and said, hey, I was bailing around my pond and one of my round bales rolled down into the pond. And he said, you know, that was the cleanest water I'd ever had. And you know, if they're trying to raise any fish, it can be really, really bad for them. Some of the recommendations, putting copper sulfate in, that can actually, of course, you can get copper buildup in your pond, but it can also encourage other bad bacteria. There are things like shade balls that you put on the surface, so the blue-green algae doesn't get any light. But, you know, our winds in Kansas, those shade balls all end up on one shore or the other. So aeration, I mean, there's just a lot of different things being sold. If you research this on the internet, you'll see all these wonderful foo-foo concoctions you can buy for $250 a gallon that may last, you know, a couple weeks. So it's really kind of a beast, figuring out what causes it and how to prevent it. So
Perfect.
so that's all I have, guys, if there are no other questions.
Yeah, I've got one more question actually. So in terms of kind of, and I don't know if you went over this already, but location wise, in terms of Eastern Kansas, Central Kansas, Western Kansas, is it more common in a certain area, or is it kind of spread throughout?
It is throughout the state. Now, I think in central Western Kansas, ponds are not as prevalent maybe, but it is throughout the state. And as you know, I know climate change is kind of controversial, but as things start warming up sooner and whatnot, it'll go even further. This is a horrible problem down in Florida, and they have blue-green alliances, and we tried to get some grant money from them, and we're not a targeted state. So, but I do see this as a oncoming problem. If you haven't seen it yet, you probably will be seeing it. One of the KDHE researchers told me last summer that if something's not done with Milford Lake, it will be closed to the public. They had a blue-green algae bloom the size of an acre in the middle of the lake floating around last summer. So, and you know, we just don't know enough. We know it's from phosphorus, extra nitrogen, but we just don't know what combination. We just don't know enough about it to really prevent it.
One more question. Sandra's asking and is curious how long it takes for the test to come back from KDA.
from the vet lab, you should get it within a few days. So, and if you don't, we send those samples in, but as agents, I guess I would encourage you guys to look on the vet diagnostic lab page on how to submit samples. So thanks again for your interest. If you have any other further questions, get a hold of me.
Okay, all righty. Well, thanks, Jody. And I do have one slide that you can see up. Again, this was the 4th session. We do have one more session. Excuse me, let me take a drink of water here. But we do like to have you complete the evaluation, and Justine put that in the chat, and I think she'll probably post it again there because this is what helps us determine our future programming, educational programs. So we really would appreciate your input so we can act accordingly. Our next virtual cattle conversations, our last one, will be actually next Thursday, April 29th, and we're going to finish up with our watershed specialist that kind of Jody mentioned. I think she mentioned Will Boyer. And they're going to be talking about providing adequate water for grazing livestock. So they'll be talking about pond management and tank management and that type of thing. So please be sure to join us for that. Let your friends know that. And again, we'd like to thank Jody for sharing that information, sharing the projects that they're working on. Jody, if any of the producers out here maybe would have problems, could they contact us and maybe let you know and maybe get some ponds in the study out here, or are you interested in any more ponds?
Well, we're kind of full up.
Okay.
KDHE can only go so far from Topeka at this point.
Okay.
But these slow sand filters, we're putting these on trailers. So if someone gets a hot pond and they need to have some other way to get water to their cattle, give me a call. We've got a couple of them. We'll have them set up and they will hopefully have the biofilm ready to go. And so that is an option. And if they just want to build their own, we can give them the specs on how to do that. But yeah, we'll help anybody. So.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, again, I think that completes our program for today. And like I said, these, the recording and the handouts will be posted on our websites as well. So we will see you next Thursday. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.